Hey, Richard Mellor here, Facts for Working People. I just wanted to say a couple of things about, I was watching this, what's her name, Meryl Streep in Hollywood there, talking about, basically she was having a go at Trump. I mean, she was talking about violence and the need for diversity, and Hollywood's got all this, that, and the other. She didn't mention him by name. She's obviously a Democrat. There's a whole struggle going on between these two parties because the Democrats are very upset that they lost in the election. We got this gang in Washington now, and so basically she's a Democrat and she's trying to undermine Trump. She's talking about violence and everything else. Well, geez, this is not the first time. He's not going to be the first president that's committed violence, is it? Obama's been bombing the hell out of everybody for God knows how long, for 8 years. He's deported more than any other president in history. Now, not only that, this violence continues here every day. Look at during the Great Recession here that we just had, and the Democrats were in power. 5 million thrown out of their homes, evicted by sheriffs on behalf of moneylenders. I had a woman call me from a motel because I had been involved in a renters' rights group. She was living in a motel with a disabled son and her husband, and her house was a mile away down the street. This was in the valley, and Central Valley. I'm in California, and she couldn't go into her own home to get her own belongings because she had to have somebody from the bank there or a sheriff there. There's violence goes on every day in this country. There's lots of ways of committing violence. You take jobs away from people, that's violence. Her party she's in, Meryl Streep, that party's committed God knows how much violence. It's the only party in history that's dropped nuclear weapons on civilians. So, it's just phony. Partisan bickering between two capitalist parties and their flunkies in Hollywood. But she talks about all the diversity that were there yesterday or this week. Black people, people from Israel, people from Morocco, people from Europe, people from Asia and Africa. It's just nauseating. Yeah, they were. But what was not mentioned? What sort of people were they? They weren't working class people. We're the largest group in society. We're the most diverse group in society, but you don't talk about working class. You don't talk about class at all. Who do I know in that room down in Beverly Hills, or will I ever meet anybody in that room down in Beverly Hills? She can go stuff her goddamn diversity, okay? So she's witnessed, if she's been paying any attention at all, the violence that's been committed. What about Standing Rock? What about all of this? What about the conditions in general with Native Americans? West Virginia, our urban centers. I don't want to hear about about violence and what her government and her party prior to this, the next 4 years or so, has been doing abroad. So part and parcel of my frustration and everybody's frustration, they don't mind that we're demoralised. I mean, I was listening to the news this morning. It was on KPFA. Actually, it's one of the better news. That Amy Goodman show, and she's going through the stuff, and it was sort of bumming me out because I was thinking, you can think to yourself, my God, what can we do? And part of the reason is they don't talk about the working class. You don't hear Amy Goodman talk about the working class needs to build its own party. The trade unions need to shut down the country. The working class needs to stop economy working. We live in California. I live in the sixth most powerful, largest economy in the world, and the trade unions and the workers on the docks are organised. We could shut the docks, but not just on our own, but to spread that struggle. I was a bit bummed out after the news there, and then I happened to read the paper. I see there's a tube strike, a subway strike in London, right? Shut down that city, a major city, one of the world's major cities. You got, in Mexico, there's an uprising against fuel prices. We had a general strike or a huge strike of hundreds of millions in India recently. We've had big struggles throughout the world, but it's never this country of the advanced capitalist countries. It's the worst country in terms of the mass media. We're in the belly of the beast here. Yes, they got food cheap, which is important because most riots are about food. Gas is fairly cheap still, and we got lots of little gadgets, But believe me, the American working class is the first victim of the thugs that run this country, the gangsters that run this country in terms of ideology. The ideology of the market, free enterprise is phony individualism. There's not a capitalist enterprise that could survive if the state didn't clean up after it, didn't fund it, didn't subsidize it. Believe me, it's not such an efficient system. But that part and parcel of the cloud, the black cloud that hangs over people is that the working class is non-existent. You'll hear discussions about everything, about every gender, about every religious rights, about all sorts of sexual orientation, about safe spaces, about all sorts of things. Try see if you get a safe space when you're on an assembly line in Detroit. I've worked in factories in New York and London. You talk about there's no safe spaces there. The only safe spaces you get is if you organise as workers and you defend yourself and you fight back. That's the most powerful weapon we have. The world is cruel, and we can't look to the state to create a safe place for us. We have to build it. We have to fight for it ourselves. But when I was looking at those struggles in London, in Mexico, you got battles of the working class in Southeast Asia, in Bangladesh now. I was reading that the garment industry, since that fire, is now about 80% of the economy. It's actually a bit of a problem because it's a pretty one-trick pony when it comes to the economy. And of course, it's just basically on cheap labour, women labour mostly. So that's part and parcel. This will all change. All of these extraneous, of course, safe spaces are right. Of course, bullying's wrong. Of course, people have, as far as I'm concerned about gender, it's what a person feels inside, not what they look like or anything else. It's what you feel as. That's what's important. I don't care what their religion is. I don't care what their gender is. And I think most people in the last analysis, the issues are: can we eat? Can we get a roof over our head? I was on a Macy's picket line many years ago, and there was all sorts of different types and different characters, gay people, straight people, all sorts of different people. And we were all on that picking line some years ago, and the bond was the class question. But here it's ignored all the time. It's ignored all the time. And when you're in struggle over over the real nuts and bolts, what really matter in this world, whether I can eat, whether I can have a roof over my head and security, when you're in struggle with all different people against the bosses, in that struggle, when you're together in that, then that helps to break down these other divisions and build solidarity to fight the real enemy. And just lastly, another thing I wanted to say was about this young guy that got shot, that shot the people in Fort Lauderdale. It really bothers me. Here they are, they're talking about him possibly getting the death penalty. This guy, I haven't read enough about it, but this guy, from what I understand, he reached out, he went to the FBI, he even said he was being controlled by the US government or ISIS or both at some point in time, and now they're talking about he'll probably get the death penalty, or he should get the death penalty. Doesn't it make you sick? They trained him. What the military is they train our young people to be killers. They just got to kill the right people. It's like those guys that's the danger of workers in uniform, is when they turn the guns around, and not in an unbalanced way, in a fit of rage like this, but in an organized way against the people that profit from wars. Henry Kissinger's 93. Well, why is he 93? He'll never, and he has never, faced the horrors that this young guy who they're talking about killing, giving the death penalty, he's never faced the horrors that guy's had to face. Or my friends who and their brothers some of them that have died 40 years later in Vietnam, what they had to face. And so, it sickens me. That's why I oppose the death penalty. It depends who does the hanging, the judging, and who does the hanging. Okay, they don't kill their kids, and so it really frustrates me that we're talking about this young guy now. And I've been lucky myself. I've never been in a war. I grew up in a military family, as I've mentioned before. My father was in prison camp for 4 years. It almost probably saved his life because he was in Tokyo for that period, most of it, Tokyo and Hong Kong. But it messed him up. So it really bothers me, that does. So that I just I'm not being able to write because of my hand. I've got a little problem. But I just want to say a couple of those things. But it's easy to get demoralized in a sense in this country because look at the union leaders. They don't say a damn word. So there's nobody speaks for us. Meryl Streep doesn't speak for me. Clint Eastwood doesn't speak for me. This idiot Trump doesn't speak for me, and most workers know it. There's 80 million or so, or whatever, that didn't vote. We have no voice in this country, and it's very demoralizing because we don't see. It can be. We don't see, and they don't bring us. Even though there's a lot of things happening, we don't see that there's this powerful force, the working class in society. But it will. The working class is active. Flint, Standing Rock. And some of the examples I've given today, we've had big struggles. We even have strikes, but you never read about it. So there's a lot going on. But the American working class will burst onto the scene at some point. This cannot continue. What's going on here? And as I say, and we've said on our blog, it's not going to be pretty because there's no leadership at this point. There's various movements developing. There's no leadership. The union leadership are just criminal in their absence. But there is movements taking place, and around the world, as we see, there's the working class is beginning to fight back. We mustn't forget that we're in a very isolated and insulated society in the United States. So anyway, and on the other thing, just the last thing, you read Labour history, okay? You got to read Labour history. We remember that old ad that used to say Merrill Lynch built America? No, it didn't build America. We need to make sure we read Labour history from the textile factories of the South and the East Coast. The blacks in the imagine 300 years without wages. Malcolm X, I think it was, that said, no wonder it got rich so fast, this country. It never paid wages for 300 years or more. And if you want to, anybody says to you about black folks, why didn't they get over slavery? They can't get over slavery because it's the 300 years without wages that has led to this situation and the vicious, brutal regime that went along with it that has led to the crisis that we're seeing today. They cannot get over it. It's still it's a remnant of it. That's what we're seeing. And so I just wanted to get some stuff off my chest. That's what a good thing about having a blog. And we can do these things today. We have much more access, workers do. I put something up on the blog's Facebook page today, an article I'd read by Martin Wolf, one of the bourgeois' most thoughtful and astute theoreticians and economists. Of course, he's not one of ours, and he leaves out the working class in his piece. And so, as I mentioned on there, we have discussions weekly. We have a think tank, the Facts for Working People. We discuss these events. That's what they do at Davos. It's what they do at Jackson Hole. It's what they do in their hundreds of think tanks that they have because they have money. And Facts for Working People has one, wants to build it. And if you like what you read or what you see, or you like our ideas, contact us. You see the email address on the blog. Contact us, and if you'd like to participate in that, we'll talk about that. So anyway, that's me for today. Thanks a lot, Richard Miller, Facts for Working People.